Good evening, everybody. Looks like we're up. Hey, Chris. Hey, Gene. Hey, Martin. We're glad to have you, Chris. Hey, Laura and Rose. Hey, Chuck, Eric, Betsy, Ann, and Karen. Hey, Susan, Bala. Hey, Sherry over on the YouTube.
Benny Goodman, ladies and gentlemen, the man with the torrid clarinet and the even more torrid band who purveys assorted rhythms.
Hey, Rob. Hey, Becky.
In the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago.
Hey, Jeff.
And first of all, one of
Oh, is it doing that weird thing with the voice? Okay. Why don't we just try it like this? Is this any better? New machine tonight. You can possibly also tell the audio looks a little bit different. Is this better? Testing. Testes. 1, 2, 3. Alright. We got a dusting of snow. It looked very nice. It wasn't big. I'll have to mess with the settings a bit. Hey Sue, hey Rodney. You might also notice a higher definition webcam going out tonight. We'll see. Kathy, almost. Evening, Amy. Yep, Heather. All new machine. Hola, Phoenix. Hey, Emily. Hey, Joanne. Thanks, Susan. Evening, Miss Cindy. Hey, Wisp over on YouTube. He's sick. Glad I'm having fun making them. Hope everybody had a good time with Patty. Into poor. Where is Miles right now? I don't know where Miles is at. I'm sure we'll see him soon. Hey, Jordana. Hey, Amanda. I'm drinking tea that's not really tea tonight. Just like it, the wind blew in. That would be Patty Swanson was talking for Chicagoans tonight, so it'll be on the Chicago for Chicagoans page. Hey Cindy, hey Tracy. Hey Mom. Oh, here's Miles. I was just wondering where Miles was. Here he is. Hey Miles, come be in HD. There's a new camera in effect, so you'll look smoother than ever.
Benny Goodman presents Helen Ward singing With All My Heart.
It's a Crown Royal iced tea. My heart Yep, a Devo hat about 60 years ahead of its time. Hey, Paula. Miles. Hey, Jacqueline. All my heart, I say I love you dearly, for I am yours sincerely with all my heart. Hey, Aaron, Elisa. Miles. Stand up for him, Miles. There you go. Hey, June. Hey, Melissa. I would write a song telling of the miracle the day you came along. Evening, Kathleen. Evening, Vicky. Hey, Kurt and Amy. Hey, Doe over on YouTube. We'll get started in a few minutes. Hey, Lauren. Oh, Miles. Yeah, hop up. Yeah. You know what you should do on TikTok is TikTok Kitty. You got TikTok Kitty, where you go. TikTok, 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 TikTok. Thank you, Susan. Hey, Grandma Bell. Hey, Mike.
Benny Goodman goes way back and gets a lot of rhythm out of Walk, Jenny, Walk. Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Hey, Viva. I'm trying to dance my way sane today. Hey, Carol. But having Miles lip sync part of a broadcast be an option, that would be kind of difficult. Hey, Jordana. Hey, Jordana's mom. She's the one who hit me to the availability of this awesome shirt. Just like the one John Lennon wore on January 21st, 69 in the Get Back show. Yeah, Mike, I'm saving my own sanity too, you know. And happy birthday to Jordana. Hey, Judy, John's wife. Hello, Patrick. On YouTube. Hey, Joanne. Hey, Patrick, we got it. Picking on a typo in a comment would be, I don't know, like, typo correction is a pretty low form of discourse to begin with. Not that I don't engage in it. Ooh, snow's coming in, huh? That's alright by me. Makes it a little tricky for tomorrow. Ooh, Jennifer, that sounds good. Haven't seen a lot of Alfred Hitchcock in a while. Well, Lori, I didn't have them all to start with. I had the vest, that's the important thing.
And they all loved it. They all loved those fastens when they played by Benny Goodman. And now another one just in the same vein.
All right, we'll let Benny Goodman do one more tune before we get started properly. This is more or less a brand spanking new tour, but it's very similar to what I did a couple of weeks ago. So this will all seem fairly familiar. Hey, Megan. welcome along. If you were here a couple of weeks ago, this is mostly material you've seen, you're just seeing it in a different way now. Without quite so good a lighting as we had there. You always tell when Miles has just hopped up, the lighting will change a bit. Miles, leave the guitar alone. Hey, Megan. Though 20s beauty is never far behind, it is the 20s after all, and it's up to us to make them roar. I should have worn my smoking jacket, honestly. It would really rather clash with the John Lennon shirt. But oh, it's tempting. Hey, Doreen. It would be apropos. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Letting Benny Goodman finish off this tune, and we'll go ahead and get started, everybody. Evening, Johan. All right, that has been Benny Goodman coming to you live from the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel in downtown Chicago. Well, live, but in 1936.
And now Benny Goodman's arrangement of the
Miles.
Paul Rag.
Miles. Oof. Miles, it's time for Daddy to start working, okay? All right. Well, all right then. Welcome along, everybody. I'm Adam Seltzer for Mysterious Chicago Tours, coming to you with a more high-definition webcam than we've usually had on here. Looks like it's smoothing me out a little bit. All right, as I get older and older, that seems more and more useful. All right, so welcome along. I'm Adam Seltzer for Mysterious Chicago Tours. I've been a tour guide and historian here in Chicago for going on 20 years now. I've got about a dozen Chicago history books out. I'm on the History Channel and the Travel Channel all the time, so I am incredibly famous, and you should definitely pay attention to whatever I say. So, among my relevant books are Mysterious Chicago, the book, H.H. Holmes, The True History of the White City Devil, the brand new Murder Maps USA, as featured in a full-page ad in The Atlantic this week. I looked up how much it cost for that. It's like more than I made off of my last 6 books. So they must have pretty high hopes for this one. And coming this summer, Graceland Cemetery, Chicago's Stories, Symbols, and Secrets. I've written Lillian Collie's story, the one we're talking about tonight, into a book called Just Kill Me, and I believe I also managed to work her into the Smart Aleck's Guide to American History way back in 2009. So, all right, everybody, today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite topics, one of the first really big Chicago research rabbit holes that I fell down, which was the story of Lillian Collier and the Wind Blew In, the Bohemian tea room that she operated near Ohio and Michigan way back in 21 and 22. Well, to get started with, one of the first things that I did here in Chicago was look up places like Bughouse Square and the Clark Theater, stuff that I had read about in Daniel Pinkwater books that made Chicago seem like this bohemian wonderland back when I was a kid. I was able to find them without too much trouble and got really interested in the beatnik scene in Chicago and the 1920s Bohemia scene in Chicago and started reading up on a lot of that stuff. And one of the first places I looked was this place called Bughouse Square, which is now a very nice park, but used to have a real reputation for being quite a bit rougher than this. Bughouse Square is the second oldest park in the city, by most metrics. They say that it was granted to us, the land was granted to us by a guy named Erasmus Bushnell, who said that we could have the land on 2 conditions. One is they had to build a wall around it. And if you look real close behind the dogs, you can see the city got around that by putting up like a 4-inch wall. He didn't say how high it had to be. The other thing was that anybody who wanted to had to be allowed to make a speech there at any time. And for a really long time, you could go out there any night, up until about the 1950s. You could go out there any night when the weather was good. There'd be upwards of 3,000 people cramming into this park, standing up on soapboxes to make speeches, or heckling people who were so engaged. Some people said it was the best entertainment and the best education you could get in the city. Now, there were a number of regular characters who showed up. There was Clark Street Mary, there was Weird Mary, there was Suicide Mary. Lots of people with some various appellation appended to the name Mary. Now, one of the best things that came out, in 1947, a reporter happened to be there the night that they were debating the big news story of the day, that a UFO had crashed in Roswell, New Mexico. Really interesting stuff went around. One guy said that it was really just plates flying T-bone steaks around. One-armed Charlie Wendorf, one of the big characters, said that it was all kind of a thing of mass hysteria, and you could cure that by eating living things like dandelions. He himself ate 50 dandelions a day. Other people said that it was had all kinds of weird explanations for this, and one person said, well, they're making those computer things at Harvard that can almost think for themselves. If they can think for themselves, they can probably think up stuff that our scientists can't figure out on their own. Now, this died out, depending on who you ask. Most people the last couple of generations have said that Bughouse Square died out because of television. But when I first started going to the Bughouse Square debates, there were still some real old-timers there who said radio killed Bughouse Square. Now, when I first went out there, I ran into a guy named Joffrey Stewart, who was the Beatnik Party's vice presidential candidate in 1960. The Beatnik Party had a whole convention. He told me the whole story of the convention, which I hadn't seen anywhere else. A guy named Slim Brundage, who called himself King of the Beatniks and was well known in the Bohemia scene around here, organized a whole bunch of Beatniks to take a bus trip out to New York for a big Beatnik Party convention to nominate a candidate for president, assuming that they were going to nominate him. But he only bought them one-way tickets, and nobody could really stand the guy. So according to Joffrey, they ended up nominating a guy named William Lloyd Smith, who ran a bookstore called Murray's Beatnik Bookstore, just about a block away from Bughouse Square. And Joffrey became the vice presidential candidate, and he was all over the place. He appears in the poem Howl by Allen Ginsberg. He's the guy passing out incomprehensible leaflets in Fireplace, Chicago. This is Joffrey at Bughouse Square, still passing out incomparable leaflets more than 50 years after Howl was published. He was still doing it right up to the time of his death just a couple of years ago. I would run into bars and stuff occasionally. And in the spirit of Bughouse Square, you might remember about 2 years ago over on Chicago for Chicagoans, we did like a recreation of Bughouse Square. So to save my own voice for a second, I'll show you my speech from that.
Go.
My fellow denizens of Bughouse Square, hipsters, flipsters, and finger-poppin' daddies, thank you, Mr. Wendorf, for that impassioned advocacy of eating 50 dandelion buds a day. But I speak today of a problem which no amount of dandelion bud eating can actually solve. As you all know, in 1871, our great city was visited upon by a great conflagration, a fire which burned from the south side all the way to Lincoln Park, sparing only a few buildings, including the residence of Mall and Ogden, which stood right where the Newberry Library is now. Coincidence that it spared the home of the man who was the brother of our first mayor? Perhaps, but yet, I tell you, this was not a fire of human origins. Now, Mr. William Ogden himself, the former mayor whose brother was spared, did say that even as the fire was burning, there was also a cyclone, a great tornado blowing through the city. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we can have tornadoes in Chicago. Meteorologists assure us of this fact. However, they are highly uncommon. So are massive fires. Two things at the same time? I think not. Other people noted that it seemed for a moment as though the sky had opened up and fire rained down from above. Others still spoke of green, red, orange, and blue flames licking at the cornices of buildings. Others still said that buildings far from the line of fire seemed to blow up from within. Ladies and gentlemen, I quote Ignatius Donnelly, the esteemed writer of Ragnarok, the Age of Fire and Gravel, who spoke of this not being a fire of human origins. Within a week, the Mrs. O'Leary story was debunked. Within days, it was determined that this could have been no mere incendiary fire. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Donnelly believed that this was a fire from a meteor. The same meteor, he believed, which had 1,000 years before wiped out the continent of Atlantis. We will spare Mr. Donnelly for not knowing the science that came later. Scientists today generally agree that meteors could not start fires. Mr. Donnelly, of course, could not have known that. Also, he did not live until 1897. In 1897, people all over the country reported an airship flying over their cities. In Chicago, it was seen above Rogers Park, looking like a giant flying submarine, an unidentified flying cupcake, a cigar going through the air. This was far before the Wright brothers had their first successful flight. This was not an airship of human origin. This was the same aliens coming to check on their progress after having destroyed our city. In 1871, they wished to study our resilience by burning Chicago to the ground and watching us rebuild. By now, we have shown them that Chicago does rise again. So, ladies and gentlemen, as the schoolyard joke says, I come before you to stand behind you. I stand upon this stage to make a platform. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here today not to warn you against fires, but to plead with our alien overlords. Next time, do Los Angeles. Preferably before the Cubs have to play the Dodgers again. Last year, they won 106 games. They've got Cody. He was the MVP and the Silver Slugger and the Golden Glove. And we're supposed to go against that with a team owned by Joe Ricketts? And even if destroying Los Angeles does not help the Cubs beat the Dodgers, at least it could do something even more important. Bring the Dodgers back to Brooklyn! 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 Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time indeed. So, in the 1970s, some newspaper reporters took some of the old Bughouse Square veterans out around the old park, who was getting cleaned up at the time, and said, do you miss it? And they said, don't have to. Whole world is Bughouse Square now. It's like, really, I feel like you can get the same effect just by going on Twitter nowadays. But just down the block from Bughouse Square, I'm going to move just across the street here now, into this alley. Now, officially, we're in the Gold Coast area. It's just above the Loop, just above River North, about a mile north of the Loop. If you actually walk from the Clark Theater to here, it'd be a pretty good hike. But there is this alley that is actually a street. According to maps, this alley is known as Tooker Place Alley. It still turns up like that on maps sometimes. Now, of course, it's been rebuilt some from the 1910s and 1920s. Back in the day, if we were to spin around, do a spin move from right about halfway through here, right about at the next building, at night it would have looked like this. This is Tooker Place as of about 1927. Now you see that door right directly underneath me here. Here's what it looked like during the daytime. Step high, stoop low, and leave your dignity outside. To get into this place, you had to come in from another direction. You had to literally crawl through a hole in the wall to get inside of the place. But it was a place known as the Dill Pickle Club, spelled with one L instead of two because they thought there might be some kind of a copyright issue. Now, the Dill Pickle Club was sometimes known as the playground for people who think, a slogan later repurposed by some other places. And it was a place where people, artists and weirdos and self-described anybody who was a nut about something could show up. They would put on plays, they would have jazz bands, and they would have regular debates and lectures. The kind of thing we never see anymore is open forums. So here's the program they had one night. Victor Lindlar, MD, would discuss the physiology and significance of flappers and cake eaters. Cake eaters were male flappers. Then Ben Reitman would talk about love and death in Bohemia. Ben Reitman was all over at these places. Ben Reitman was a noted birth control advocate, a noted anarchist, a noted hobo advocate, and the doctor and the non-monogamous primary partner of noted radical Emma Goldman. She was probably hanging around here as well. Another night, Mae West, Pistol Packin' Mama, came with her ensemble from the play Sex that was getting her banned in certain cities. Dr. J.W. Clapman would talk biology of life and death. Dr. Benjamin H. Breakstone would talk the rejuvenation of man, which at the time might have been talking about advocating implanting goat testicles into your own scrotum. People thought you could do quite a bit with that at the time. There's also, among the archives of the Newberry Library, which is the building that was back behind that whatever weirdo was giving that speech a minute ago. Back behind that, in their Dill Pickle archives, is this fantastic picture. Now, the guy being outrageously flirted with there in that incredible smoking jacket is an a novelist by the name of Max Bodenheim. That's his wife over on the left, looking distinctly unamused. And the woman doing the obnoxious flirting with him is Lillian Collier. Lillian Collier was only a teenager when she started hanging out at the Dill, and was said to write charming poetry that made her the darling of all the people there. She'd been writing poetry for quite a while. Now, Lillian, as it turns out, had quite a number of jobs. But when I first looked her up, I noticed just a couple of mentions about her when I was researching Chicago Bohemia. Looking her up a little bit led me to this article from 1924, which went around quite a bit, that went, "Is today's girl becoming a savage?" Some woman named Lady Balfour, a British noblewoman, had made some kind of statement about how these flappers nowadays with their perfume and their makeup and riding around on trains and smoking cigarettes. Lillian Collier was quoted as saying, "Lady Balfour had best know the flapper before she condemns her. Women too long have had to play the role of the underdog. Now woman has broken the traditional bond. The woman of yesterday was a box of suppressed desires. The flapper of today typifies understanding. She is the product of a new age turning toward the light. The flapper yearns for good. What then if she does use a bit of powder, smoke a cigarette, or wear perfume so highly displeasing to Lady Balfour? Isn't that better than doing all these things in the privacy of the boudoir? You can bet it is, and regardless of what Lady Balfour says, the flapper will survive." So, Lillian had been around for a while, but looking her up a little bit further, we found a number of her other jobs, including a stint working for the circus. She was with the Sells Floto Circus. That's her doing leapfrog over a woman in kind of like a Tarzan outfit, but some excellent boots. And for a while, she was a reporter, they always called her our little girl reporter at the Chicago Post, barf. But they would send her off on assignments like, she remembered years later, they would send her out to faint in the street and see what happens and then write about it. Or they would have her spend the day working construction on one of the high-rises. So here she is, high above the city, sitting on a steel girder, risking her life and violating any number of safety rules just to get a good story. This is a version of it that was digitized by Life magazine just a few years back. But after bopping from job to job for a while and writing charming poetry at the Wind Blew In by night, at the Dill Pickle by night, she opened a place on North Michigan Avenue. So here it is today, the Magnificent Mile. We'll walk down the block. In the background, you can see 333 North Michigan, which would not have been there at the time. None of these buildings were there at the time. In the early 1920s, the Wrigley building was just getting finished up, and it was mostly still whiskey bars and bohemian dives down here in a neighborhood at the time was called Tower Town. So right where the Under Armour store is now was this little frame building that had originally been a gas station until Lillian took it over and turned it into the Wind Blew In. That's Lillian on the right with her friend and business partner, Virginia Harrison. Possibly more than just a business partner. And she said, "I tried to make it a place of artistic tone and spiritual uplift, as much like Greenwich Village in New York as possible. But it wasn't possible because the dirt is so much different in Greenwich Village. In spite of these handicaps, I maintain it is the best restaurant ever made out of an old gasoline station. The Wind Blew In was designed as a place where artists and writers could foregather and discuss the arts. The windows are kept gray to give that cathedral interior effect to the dining room. There are plumber's candles giving a mellow light and don't cost as much as electric light." So this became a place where artists could hang out. It was also quite likely an early gay hangout in Chicago. It was a place where people of the genius type went, though really I think by the time they'd only been open for a couple of weeks, probably they had about as many people just going there to see what all the fuss was about than anything else. But we do have a few advertisements for what went on in the place. The Wind Blew In, January 7th, 1922, 116 East Ohio near Michigan, the rendezvous of artistic Chicago, always something doing. Meeting in the studio to form cooperative players groups, plays will be read and parts assigned for rehearsal, all interested welcome. Or writers, artists, and others meet kindred souls every night in the week at the Wind Blew In. Lecture on Sunday, What Art Means to Me, by an artist, a writer, a designer, and a matinee idol. That would have been a very interesting panel. Reminds me of that old sketch on The State where they get like a whole bunch of artsy people and say, "Now our panel discussion is, what is art?" And one guy just says, "You mean like paintings and stuff?" Like, correct, that's all, folks. Another ad from towards the end of the time of the Wind Blew In, writers, artists, and other meet kindred spirits. This lecture Sunday night, Sam Putnam, poet, editor, and newspaperman, will lecture on 4 young Chicago poets. Most interesting here is that it includes Jun Fujita. Now, he is better known, really, as a photographer. He was one of the first Asian American photojournalists. He shot a lot of photos that we've actually shown here on Mysterious Chicago over time, like this shot of the Eastland, capsized in the Chicago River. I know we've shown that one. And the famous shot of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre site. But he actually came to the Wind Blew In to discuss his poetry. And quite a bit of his poetry is available online. He was a well-regarded poet. I'll read just a bit of one. Dried Whispers. The icy gaze of the moon has stilled all things of night, save dried whispers of leaves that curl and fall. Snow, fainter than hushed feet, stealing through my hazy dream. Snow in the midnight woods. It's very evocative. I really like that. So the Wind Blew In operated really for just a couple of months and got raided frequently. Finally, one day, 100 years ago this month, in February of 1922, the cops raided it and arrested 40 people, including Lillian Collier and Virginia Harrison, who is often described as her aide or her partner. Some people said that her last name, that it was Virginia Collier. So there was definitely some hints that they were thought to be a bit more than friends at the time. Petting parties in Wind Blew In? No, youths of her. So the judge dismissed everybody except Lillian and Virginia. They were due to come back in a little while. Either Lillian or Virginia famously told the Judge Jacobs, "Your Honor, we solemnly swear there is no snuggle pupping at the Wind Blew In." Great line. Snuggle pupping was kind of like cuddling, only somehow a little bit more illicit. Also, one who enjoyed it was known as a snuggle pup or a snuggle puppy. Snuggle pup male, snuggle puppy female. Now, later on, when their case was continued, the judge said, well, the only thing that's really the matter with you is you have a false value of the things of life. I understand that you tried to keep a decent place here. So he sentenced them to read a book of fairy tales to cure them of their bohemian ideals. Lillian dutifully walked to the nearest library, checked out a book of fairy tales, and posed with it like so. Now, shortly thereafter, it was raided again, and she was ordered to cover up the nude statues. And she said, the cops come in here oftener than customers. There's nothing wrong with the place. The cops just didn't get their usual handout, that's all. Eventually, she even got a restraining order against the police, at which point the chief said, well, that stinks. If the courts want to open up these places, why should I care? No one else does. To a reporter printing a widely syndicated article, she said, I must preach the gospel of real life. Too many folks just in from the Corn Belt here. There aren't many real people in Chicago. I mean, those who do big things, those who see the light. But I'll try to struggle on. Bohemianism will come to Chicago, but it will take years, perhaps ages. I am willing to sacrifice myself to bring it a step nearer. You can kind of imagine what her Tumblr would have been like, or what she would have been like on TikTok, really. But then, shortly after these interviews, April of 1922, only 3 weeks after the judge issued the famous ruling, the place was wrecked by fire. And for the Chicago Post, this was front page headline news. You can see I couldn't even fit it all on on the screen at once on the microfilm reader. I had to condense it down quite a ways to show the Wind Blew In wrecked by fire from the Chicago Evening Post. Sometime in the night, the whole place was torched. And here's Lillian as she appeared right at the beginning. This is really the best view we've got of what the place looked like on the outside. And they absolutely could not resist the puns like wind blew in, blown out. And here are a couple of fantastic pictures of Lillian and Virginia. Lillian looking very sullen, very goth. It looks like she's about to do the goth gang sign here. And Virginia is smiling away. Now, apparently, though, before the place was torched, Lillian was arrested and brought in for questioning, but quickly released. But several witnesses said that Virginia had been seen stomping around, vowing to get even, and bought a can of gasoline down the block. She disappeared from the city that night and was not seen here again for some time. she would become kind of a mystery. And really, this was all kind of a mystery. 2 years out, Lillian tried to reopen the Wind Blew Inn, another place. She opened a place on LaSalle right across from the police station, which she figured would save them the trouble. But the thing is, it was too nice. Now, one person who remembered both places said, the thing is, we were paying 75 cents for tea in that place. Like I'm drinking tea right now. Tea, sure. 75 cents would have been an awful lot to pay for tea back then. That's like a $15 cup of tea. And the place on LaSalle was just too nice. When people paid that much, they wanted a little bit of dirt. They came for the experience more than for anything else. So it didn't last too much longer. Lillian, 2 years later, gave that interview about how flappers represent a new era of women turning toward the light, then disappeared from the record completely. There was about a 10-year period where every now and then I would try to find out what had happened to her and just hit a bunch of false leads and dead ends. There was a poet named Lillian Collier in Canada. There was a New York socialite who married an Olympic fencer who then died in an airship crash. A lot of people named Lillian Collier. It was a fairly common name, which made it a bit of a trick. And also it was well known around that people in Bohemia tended to change their names. That made it even trickier, so it might not have been her real name. Certainly nobody could find Lillian Collier in the census. And it wasn't because we weren't looking. So, about 2014, I started work on a book called Just Kill Me. This was a murder mystery about a ghost tour guide who makes places more haunted by killing people at them. And I decided I would write her story into it. I would have the girl in the book get obsessed with Lillian Collier the same way that I had. And that would kind of lead her to being able to solve the mystery in the end. So at that point, I realized, if I'm going to put this book out, I need to buckle down. I need to solve this mystery and figure out what happened to her. I started making sure that I had gotten every single microfilm article that I could, and finally noticed the hit pay dirt in this one, which says that he had caught people in unconventional attitudes cuddling up and smoking cigarettes. I'm not sure what he meant by unconventional attitudes. Possibly that it was same-sex couples. But then it mentions Miss Collier and her mother, Mrs. Nellie Lieberman, told the court that nothing stronger was tea was served in the restaurant. Big clue there, Lieberman. So if her mother's name was Nellie Lieberman, that was probably either her real last name or her original last name. And by looking up Nellie Lieberman, I was able to find quite a bit more. Finally found, in fact, the census. And here's why we couldn't see it. There was like a blot there that made it look like it said Lillian Colty. So now I had the names of her sisters, Martha and Berthel Lieberman. We had her parents, Meyer and Nellie Lieberman. By digging around with there, I could find where Meyer came from in Russia, when he got married. Her mother's maiden name was Bensonsohn. And digging around even further, I found out that they had originally lived in Baltimore when Lillian was a kid, where Lillian wrote this charming poem for the newspaper there. The Coming of Love. One cold day in winter as Jack Frost came sailing by, in a little boat all made of clouds way up in the sky, he looked upon the dreary world, busy as a bee, but not the smallest bit of love or kindness could he see. Everyone was hurrying, everyone was sad. Thought he, dear me, what must I do to make the people glad? So he brought dear Cupid, the little god of love, and stole him from his mother and the ones that lived above, and took him to the sad world, the sorry ones to cheer. And now he comes from heaven, on one day every year. Lillian Lieberman, aged 14 years. Now, she and her mother was also in the habit of writing to the newspapers. Around the same time, her mother wrote in to they asked a big question saying, all right, women, you want women's rights? How do you want your husbands to act? And Lillian's mother, Nellie, wrote in with an article called Must Assert His Rights. It says, a good, quiet, obedient husband would be disliked and tormented by all, especially by his wife. If he went out to smoke his pipe in the shed there, and very soon he would, like the suffragette, have to fight for his rights to be considered and recognized as a human being. Now, you kind of remember, 10 years later, Lillian was in all the papers saying that so what if women smoke cigarettes openly? Isn't that better than doing it in the boudoir? It's exactly like her mother had said here. It was kind of very, very, very early 1910s version of feminism, I suppose. But also, I did rather like the article right next to Lillian's mother's was called "Women Love Domination." We'll just put that up and snicker at it for a second. But based on the census record, we can find where they were in Chicago. There is a marriage record to a Lillian Lieberman to Herbert Collier in the year before they moved to Chicago. They lived on Levitt Street in the Wicker Park area, right where this newer building is now. Unfortunately, it's not the old one that's still standing. But having this data, having her mother's maiden name and having her father's date of birth and his country of birth and his place of origin, I was able to start looking him up. Found his World War II draft registration. Meyer Julius Lieberman. At that time, he was living in Los Angeles. And then down at the bottom, a name and address of someone who will always know your address, Mrs. Lillian Gerard of Los Angeles. That was the name that opened up the floodgates. Looking up Lillian Gerard, I found a couple of references to there being a writer whose real name was Lillian Gerard, and it wasn't too hard to eventually trace her back to Lillian Collier. Now, it turned out that Lillian had initially moved to California, married a guy named Frank Gerard, worked on Cannery Row for a while. By 1934, she was living in Los Angeles, and made the news at one point. She found a woman named June DeLong who was wandering around incoherent after taking way too many sleeping pills in the middle of a big Hollywood trial. She had been, it was one of the first big Hollywood moral trials. She was caught in bed along with another naked woman and the head of Central Casting, which led to a bit of a trial. That's a whole other story. But in the middle of that, she was also writing murder mysteries. She had taken the pseudonym of Nellie's Child, which is a fast way of saying Nellie's Child. She changed her first name formerly to Nellie's. She appears in most of her vital records under the name Nellie's. She seems to have changed her name quite a bit. She had a son named Frank Gerard and changed his last name a couple of times. But while she was writing these mystery novels, she also wrote a play called Weep for the Virgins. Weep for the Virgins was produced by the famous Group Theater Project in New York. She apparently hopped trains to get from California to New York to see her own play put on Broadway. It only lasted about a week. She wrote quite a number of plays over the course of her life. She lived in New York for the next couple of decades after this, went to every Broadway show that came out. She wrote a number of plays. A common theme in reviews of them is the reviews are never good. Her books always got very good reviews. The plays, less so. But by poking this up, we started finding things like a picture of her in 1938. Or a picture of her in the 1940s when she was just a housewife for Frank Gerard and writing novels on the side. Though she eventually divorced Frank Gerard, married a guy named Abner Rosenfeld. Now, one of my favorite things that I found is in the 1930s, she wrote a chapter for a book called Chicago Murders. This was an anthology of Chicago murder stories. This is that's her in the hat in the middle here, right in front of the column at the old Marshall Fields bookstore at an autographing party they had for this. Right next to her is Vincent Starrett, who is best known as an expert on Sherlock Holmes, has an awesome Sherlock Holmes-themed gravestone at Graceland Cemetery. I'll read just a bit of an excerpt of Lillian's chapter was about a woman named Marble Mildred, a woman who was very nearly got the electric chair. He said, the most common crime in the homicidal calendar, the crime of passion, is still a rare... what is going on with my machine here? Okay. Everyone has experienced rage and an ego of snarling for blood, and almost everyone has resisted its demands, or indulged them within limits that stop short of murder. Bare acquaintances slyly rejoicing at funerals, husbands and wives verbally assaulting each other, are all paying tribute to the same impulse. If wishes were horses, some of our best friends would be trampled to death. Usually, when a man shoots a woman, he attempts his own life. When a woman shoots a man, she seems to think that's enough for one day. It's really a very clever piece of writing. I wish she had done more nonfiction. The only other nonfiction by her I found was an account of her trip to Israel that she took in 1962, which is fascinating. Israel in 1962 was still run by secular socialist types who would say things like, see, we don't need to import zippers, we can make our own buttons. And so few people really spoke Hebrew or Yiddish there at the time that when she and her husband asked where shul was, someone said, shul who? Now, her last play was written in 1959. That's her down there with the script. On the left is her good friend Irene Castle, who had been one of the most famous actresses of the 1920s. You can still get an Irene Castle haircut. She apparently appeared in the play just as a favor to Nelise, to Lillian. And her son, Frank, who I was able to get in touch with for a while, sent me this picture of the two of them in 1976. So this is Lillian in her mid-70s. I absolutely love this picture. It's one of my favorite pictures I've ever found in the course of research, because in her mid-70s, she still looked just fantastic. And that, of course, still leaves us with one other outstanding question for all of this, and that is, what became of Virginia Harrison? Turned out that she actually became a bandit queen. Now, she gave birth to a baby almost exactly 9 months after the Wind Blew In fiasco, so either she was already pregnant at the time, or she got pregnant that same night. 9 months later, she gave birth to a baby named Jean in San Francisco and married a guy by the name of James Ryan, who, according to later reports in the Chicago Daily News, had broken out of prison in 1921 in the same jailbreak that got terrible Tommy O'Connor out of jail. So Virginia then took up with this band of bank robbers. She had a wooden leg and couldn't run very well herself, so she didn't do the actual bank robbing herself, plus she was home with the baby, but she would plot out every single raid. They did a really highly publicized raid robbing the Pacific Gas and Electric Company, then various other companies around the city, including Pullman. She actually organized a robbery of the Pullman Company. If you're a regular around here, you know that's a good running joke for us. But then her husband was shot and killed on one of the raids. She went to try to identify the body under an assumed name, and they figured out that it was her right away. And at that point, her story kind of stops. It was said at the time that they probably couldn't hold her for anything, but very difficult to tell for sure. After that, she probably stopped using the name Virginia Lane or Virginia Ryan, and who knows, that's still an open question. Some mysteries you just never quite get to solve. But one question that I asked her son when I got a hold of him was, there's a lot of rumors that maybe she and Virginia were more than friends. He said he didn't know for sure, but it would explain a lot. It didn't bother her one bit when he came out in the 1970s, and after thinking about it more, he sent me a couple of names of women that he strongly suspected that she might have had an affair with over the years. So it's one of those things we don't know for sure, but pretty good chance. She ended up moving back to Chicago with Abner, her husband. They lived up on a high-rise on North Sheridan, right on the lake, over in the Edgewater neighborhood, about a block away from the Ken Nordine house. And she died in 1981 at the age of 79. She's buried out in Shalom Memorial Park in Arlington Heights. We found her grave on Find a Grave Friday, not far away from the grave of Harold Ramis not too long ago. Well, all right, everybody. That ran a little bit shorter than I expected to. But a quick plug for the upcoming events. On Sunday, we will be doing Graceland Cemetery off the walking route. We're just about into time for in-person tours again, but this will be the stuff that doesn't turn up on the walking tours because it's just too far off of the path. And a week from tonight, on Thursday, May 3rd, 8 p.m., we are doing Bronzeville Tales. Bronzeville is a tour that I did almost a year ago now. I haven't redone it once yet. I realized I've been sitting that one out, so we'll bring that one back. And of course, if you're new here, we do morning mini tours every day at 10 o'clock, and tomorrow at 6:30 on the Patty Vasquez Facebook page, we will be doing Whiskey and a Cookie, a show where we drink whiskey, eat cookies, and discuss the events of the week. Should you need a Mysterious Chicago sweatshirt, hoodie, so if you want to attempt to be as cool as Luca is being right here, go to cafepress.com/mysteriouschicago. They've got everything you need. And with that, I'll put the Benny Goodman back on, and we will hang out for a bit like we always do. Thanks a lot for joining me, everybody. I'm Adam from Mysterious Chicago Tours. And I gotta say, the heater kicked on while I was doing the tour, and I am absolutely roasting right now. Right, guys, I've just been sweating this whole thing. There we go. Thanks, everybody. I know my voice felt kind of shot tonight. Dana, I found the Lennon shirt at a place called modshoes.co.uk. Thanks, Julie. Thanks, Amy. Lori, yeah, we did virtual tours and in person all last year. It was so cool to find out all the rest of her story. She became a mystery novelist. She didn't get serial killed like half the other people I research. Thanks, Allison. Thanks, Joanne. Now, her novels, if you search Nalise Child on eBay, the novels do come up. I've got a few of them. I've got a couple of the murder mysteries. Let me go grab them. Yeah, I got a few of her books. This is the Diamond Ransom Murders. So I think it was a bigger hit overseas than it was in the States. Murder Comes Home. And the Diamond Ransom Murders I've always wondered about has got this little inscription from Aunt Lil. You gotta wonder if that means Lillian. And then after the murder mysteries, he did some more like serious literary fiction, of which the best known was probably The Wolf on the Fold. Meet the Fury family. America produced them, nurtured them, and sooner or later, America has to deal with them. Now, talking about the topics that writers in the 40s talked about.
That was the Bugle Tall Rag, Benny Goodman's own arrangement. Now, the popular tune, Thanks a Million.
Glad to have you, Kristen. Oh, yes, Laura mentions there's a mysterious Chicago Regulars and Miles fan club page on the Facebook. If you want to hang out with the other people who hang out here, post pictures of your cats. I don't know what goes on in there. I'm not a member myself. I can't join my own fan club. That would be weird. No. I got no problem with people skipping out on me to go see Patty. A tea and oranges candle. Do they come all the way from China? Yes, and I remember it, Russell's. Thanks for everybody who has kicked in donations or joined the Patreon, which gets you all kinds of cool stuff. You know, Rob, I don't think Mr. Hawk did a whole lot of snuggle pupping. Did any of the outfit glow to the wind blew in? Possibly. There was some, they wouldn't have called it the outfit for years after that. But there was talk it was right in Dino Banyan territory. There was talk that around the Tower Town places, Dino Banyan had to do the delivering himself because most people didn't want to go into what they called pansy parlors at the time. Megan, she is buried under the name Nelise Rosenfeld. Thank you, Christine. Throwing in the tips help keep these things running as frequently as they do.
We had to have someone new, a dancer you out here in Holland. So someone started trucking. As soon as the news got round, the
Lori, I don't know how they knew it was necessarily arson. Must have smelled the gasoline or something.
everybody's trucking. It didn't take long. People on the high avenue and at Park Avenue and at all over town. You see them shuffling.
Carol, we're gonna do a time travel pub crawl for St. Patrick's Day, of course.
Like a forest blaze became a craze and sang a little Harlem now. Everybody's trucking.
Yeah, the new camera seems to be working out pretty well. I'm digging it. I gotta figure out the audio thing. It was giving me that chipmunk voice that it occasionally does. The website where I got the shirt is called Mod Shoes, M-O-D shoes.co.uk. Oh, you also see I moved the window seat that was in the dining room into the living room and moved the accent bench to the dining room. Because I really love sitting in that window when it's snowing. Love it. Did she collect any insurance? I doubt it. Gang murders on St. No, I don't know if there were any famous gang murders on St. Patrick's Day. I bet I can find one that happened though. Well, keep in mind, Tuesday, I believe, is Punchki Day. That is a holiday I will appropriate the crap out of. Jelly Donut Day? Yeah. Let's see. The cats are kind of sleeping right now. I don't know where Miles went. You can see Priya back behind me. Let me bring her on over. Priya, you want to come say hi? Priya. There's little Priya. She's getting better at being held. Are there any Irish gangs in Chicago? Sure. Do you know Bandian? No, well, we tend to organize them by ethnic group, but that's not really accurate. Susan, it's a Polish thing, a Polish Catholic thing, similar to like Fat Tuesday, but here it's Punchki Day. Punchkis are like these big yeasty jelly donuts. It's like, how did this not catch on more places? Priya, don't scratch up the couch, please. Feudal.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and we stay right in the urban room of the Congress Hotel in Chicago, and...
Tina, not that I know of.
Benny Goodman and his orchestra.
Holmes is the only one they ever sold the audiobook rights to. Sold it for much more than they'd paid me for the book rights. We got to get some Graceland tours in. Apparently, it's going to be closed for tours over the summer while they do construction. Elaine, that's right. We do have Sufgan Yote. I'm also surprised that hasn't caught on more. Like I saw a while ago, there was a thing last year where people were doing Christian Yom Kippur. It's like, that's the holiday you want to appropriate? The one of suffering and atonement? Not the one with the Sufgan Yote or the Hamantaschen? Good night, Kelly. Yeah, Tina, they didn't ask me if I wanted to narrate it. They never, it was never a discussion about it. I'm not sure who did the audio one for the Holmes one. Some guy. Nobody I'd ever met. You know, I had a TV show email me the other days asking if I could quick send them anything I have that connects H.H. Holmes to Jack the Ripper. I'm like, well, guys, I can send you some stuff that establishes that he couldn't have been Jack the Ripper. I cannot send you anything saying he could have been. Thanks, Eleanor. Thanks, everybody who's kicking a bit. Keep these things moving. Still see a Priya over my shoulder there.
And we'll let the title speak for itself. Benny Goodman presenting Madhouse.
Send a blank email back? I don't know what that is, Jennifer. If you could pick who would do the audio. Ooh. Now that Vincent Price is dead, what am I gonna say? Peter Lorre. Oh no, Dad, this is a John Lennon shirt. Thought I had a version of it here. Hang on. One of these days I'm going to get the mirror image thing right. I'm never pointing in the right direction on these things. Yeah, I can't grow my hair out. My hair doesn't grow long, it grows out. Hey, not like cannoli. And now I want some cannoli. I gotta go to Bari. Next time I go to get the mail, the post office box is right by Bari Foods. That's right. Well, no, Tomato's next door has the good cannoli.
And here's a short encore.
All right, I think I know who I'm doing for Find a Grave Friday tomorrow.
At the beginning of his program. Let's dance.
Let's see if it's snowing right now. Oh, yes, it is. Very nice. Thanks, Joanne. All right, well, Benny is playing here. I think it's time I go ahead and plug the upcoming tours. Sunday morning, we'll be doing Graceland Cemetery off the walking tour route. And Thursday, a week from tonight, we'll be bringing back Bronzeville Tales. A tour we've only done once before, so I've got to relearn everything and maybe get some new footage filmed. The last time I did it, I didn't know Gina DeLisa of the DeLisa family of Club DeLisa fame. It's going to be out there.
And his orchestra from the Joseph Urban Room of the Congress Hotel on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. This is the National Broadcasting Company.
So, all right, everybody. This has been the Lillian Collie Talk. We've got more stuff coming up. We'll be back tomorrow morning for Find a Grave Friday. In the meantime, lots of cool stuff coming up here as always. Thanks a lot for joining me, everybody. I'm Adam Seltzer for Mysterious Chicago Tours. And believe me, I will be around... Kristen, that would be awesome to see. I will be around tomorrow morning, and I will be around on Sunday as well to remind you once again that Punchki Day is coming up. So, all right, everybody, thanks for joining me. I'm Adam Seltzer for Mysterious Chicago Tours saying stay safe, stay strong, and if you can, everybody, stay peaceful and stay spooky.